We're now recording if you don't want your face shown, FYI.
Let's see, I should be able to make this be there. Everybody see that?
Yep, it's good.
Yep.
Wow, it worked. Amazing. Amazing. Okay. So what I wanted to do is just go over Quo Vadis, that is to say, where are we going, PyHC. So thoughts on structure, roles, and funding. Let's see. Why am I not getting the next slide? Okay, good. Taking a quick look at what was Julie's intro last time, I think it was also their intro this time. The purpose of PyHC as a community is to help people do heliophysics with Python. And in particular, I've highlighted two main things in this list of reducing the incidence of duplicated efforts and ensuring that existing software tools are interoperable. And everybody, I think, is committed to these general ideas, but as we heard the talks, particularly on Monday, people had various things where they're using pieces of other people's things and not other pieces. And it's still not a completely cohesive thing, although there's certainly the intention to get things in an orderly fashion. So I've got various questions to think about. Currently, we have about 1 FTE at last, three people, Alex, Julian, Sean, who've been working to keep the management side of things going and keeping these meetings organized and all that good stuff. But we have to ask, is this the right organization? And then is PyHC meta? Somebody's talking, okay. So is it a meta organization, or is it more like a SunPy? And there are other options. And I'm just going to go through some quick possibilities for some of these things. One thing is to do the SunPy option, and I mentioned this last year and it didn't seem to get a lot of traction. That is to say, we could have a project modeled on SunPy, which is modeled on AstroPy, modeled on Python itself, I think, where you have a board and executive director, affiliated packages and core packages. Most things done by volunteers, a certain number of people as package maintainers, lead developer, all these kinds of things. We haven't had all that. We've just had members, and some members are sort of, we've designated as core members, but it wasn't a terribly formal designation. But the other things are nominally affiliated. And in this model, everything is defined through SunPy enhancement proposals, which are the analog of Python enhancement proposals. These things can do various things. In particular, they can add new features, and that's the most common thing. So there's a proposal and it gets debated, and it's kind of like doing things with GitHub. And I guess it is, in fact, doing things with GitHub as it works out in practice. You can describe new processes, and you can just provide information like the PEP8, which is how to write good code. So that's one way of thinking of things. The question is, do we need some sort of integration effort? An alternative to the SunPy route would be to say, let's have one large HDE proposal, let's say, which is maybe say 300K a year for 3 years, or maybe 500K a year for 3 years, or whatever, or it could end up being just an infrastructure project. but it would have as its goal to get all the packages to interoperate. You can do this by developing standards for the packages. You can have various ways of doing that. You could have an actual core set of routines that everybody needed to support. And I have two examples here of the kinds of things that I would hope to be able to do. One is I want to use Plasma-Pi to find various parameters, say the alphane speed, the Debye length, upper hybrid frequency, plasma beta, from data I've read in from some other package. Question is, can I do that? Are the units available? Does it know how to do this? Does it recognize what how do I interact with Plasma-Pi given what I've dragged in from someplace else? Second example would be, I want to see a bunch of different spacecraft at a particular time. I want to know where they are in the solar system, how they relate to the sun in terms of foot points, and where the plasmas came from that's now reaching the spacecraft. Question is, can I do this without custom code? And then I'd like to be able to also say, okay, given I've got this configuration, what are the data from each of these, the relevant remote sensing and in situ measurements? So those are the kinds of things that I'd like to be able to do with an integrated package. And the question is, how hard is it to do that now? And I think it is in some cases quite difficult. And I don't think Plasma-Pi is set up to take whatever came from some other thing and generate all these things. But the question is, how hard is it? What is the integration step that's needed? And in the question of HDE, would we have more than one such effort, or is it not really the right thing to do? So we have none. And if we did do such an integration effort, does it sort of push us in the SunPi direction by having some things that are become core and others that are affiliated sort of in a natural way? I want to change gears for just a second and say at the other extreme, the question is, are small grants useful? There are very few proposals that were for other than the max allowed level. We did fund a couple of those, but should we include incentives to spend the less than 25K things, or is that just not a good thing to do? I want to say that there are very few proposals at any level this year. There were fewer proposals this year than last year. And the question is why that is. Is there a better funding model in general? Is 75K not worth it? Or should we bump things up to a higher level and say, okay, we're going to really give a bunch of money to some organized group that's going to put a lot of things together? So there may be other options. I was going through some of the older things on our nice website and I came up with Russell Stoneback's proposal in 2018. I think it was probably the first workshop. He suggested a hub and spoke topology where individual packages implement the bulk of the functionality, but there are higher level packages, which is not necessarily the same thing as a core package, that mediate between these things. So that you can say, okay, I've got a space-pi defined set of variables. I want to now have the Plasma-Pi package recognize that, and there will be some sort of higher level package that told them how to talk to each other. So anyway, that's what I had to talk about. And the question is, what do people have to say about it?
Yeah, thanks for bringing this up. I can't talk too much from the science end of it because I'm not actually one of the researchers doing work with this grant money yet. But as one of the people who have been helping to manage the thing, I would say it would be nice to get more hands on deck and maybe some not LASP hands too.
Yeah, as it is, we have all the HD projects, and we have everybody contributing unfunded, which is kind of the Python model in general, and most people seem to be unfunded, and that's how you go about things. But it seems like funding is useful at some level. I think it has been useful for the last thing. People can disagree if they think so, but I think having the website as it is now, having the people to organize these meetings, and the telecons and all that, I think has proven useful. And if I would guess that everyone would agree with that. But the question is there something more we need to do? Do we need to hire a Stuart Mumford, a principal architect? Dan Welling has his hand up.
Hi, so I was looking at the last slide about the hub and spoke topology for connecting these different packages, and that's something that was actually something that happened in the evolution of SpacePy, where when we first started, it was 5 or 6 of us at Los Alamos, and we just kind of shoved everything into a repository, and at one point had a hard discussion about why is this even in the same repository, and that led to John Niehoff and others instituting the data model. And I remember at the time I was working on PyBats, I thought, oh God, I don't want to rewrite all my stuff. I just figured it out. But it turned out to be a really good thing in the long run. But in the short run, whatever path we take, if we do decide as a community to bring things together, there's going to be hard decisions and a lot of effort that people will have to accept in terms of taking what they have and rewriting large swaths of things to work in a more unified way.
And that's where I was saying that maybe having a few $100K to spread around would be useful.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
maybe more.
we haven't started it yet, but we have a grant to do an interoperability exercise in SpacePy and SunPy. And once we get started, anyone else can join in, but we don't have money because it was the 75K that went to 4 institutions. So
Everybody gets a sack lunch.
right. But it
Yeah,
was,
no, that was one of the examples that I had in mind.
yeah. So, but the idea is it wouldn't take that long to write adapters so that the data models, because some of these things, the data models are different, but that is the key. If you can, if things are consistent at that data model level, then you can get interoperability. You build lower layers that it's not copy, paste, modify. It's literally just pound include or, import for Python, but, and then you can have as much variability as you need in the top layers for different communities. And you can even have multiple packages that do the same thing, but it's those lower layers that you do not want to duplicate. Because people are going to get used to PySpeed. People are going to get used to some of these different layers and plotting efforts on top. But if what's underneath can be the same, then there's the top layers get smaller, and it's not, tons of effort to have different flavors there and different efforts.
Yeah, that reminds me of what is it? The answer is always more abstraction.
And it's very hard to do that though, because you're making promises. You're saying, this is the thing that's never, ever going to change. And everyone can base everything on that. And then 2 years later, you get a new mission. It's like, wait, we never thought of that construct before. And so you have to have flexibility, and it takes experience to learn where to put the flexibility so that you don't make it so generic it's useless. So, and there will be mistakes, and you will have to change that thing you promised to never change. And so, it just takes continuous effort to keep it going. I know that's a self-serving request, so it's hard to make that request without sounding disingenuous, but software just does decay over time.
Well, yeah, and that's where I was asking you, do we need an infrastructure where we have a Stuart Mumford or somebody whose goal is to make sure that all those things are kept up with?
Yeah, I mean, I've
That
kind
might
of
make
always
sense.
I've always envisioned myself as a developer that can hop around between projects and kind of do these sorts of things. But being as new as I am, I haven't gotten as familiar with the code bases as I would like to be. But there is some benefit in that though, because I'm coming at this purely from my education in the university, learning computer science and good programming practices. So maybe it's helpful to get a fresh set of eyes on this. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we just make you full-time and have you run around through code.
I have been running around through code,
That's
doing other sorts of things, and I have maybe a small list on my notes app in my phone of apps where I think I'm seeing a little bit of overlap between them, but that's not getting very far.
Well, I think the kinds of things that I usually go back to are things like those examples that I gave in this little thing here. You need use cases. What are people really going to do with this stuff?
I think as we're having this discussion, we should keep in mind that the heliophysics decadal effort is probably going to start this fall, give or take a year. And a lot of these questions should end up, like our responses should end up going into community papers for that.
Yes. The white papers are supposedly going to be due sometime in December, I think. So
But it's worth, I like writing white papers and editing them.
the
Definitely contribute
the
to. I mean,
earlier decision is that the next HDE, they like to have these things in by November for the next year's call. So sometime this fall. So that's the kind of thing I'd like to be able to decide before. It'll be before the white papers and the decadal and all that. We have to make decisions.
I was gonna quickly add partly on the interoperability side, but also mainly on the in terms of use cases. I think it'd be nice to see the examples gallery that does exist, but I think only has 5 examples in it at the moment. But I think seeing that expand with use cases of how to use PyHC projects together would help users see what they could use PyHC for, but also I think help identify gaps in what's missing. So I'm kind of personally running through a similar project, but Solar Orbs are specific at the moment. But yeah, I think it'd be really good to get the gallery going again.
I'm glad you brought that up. I actually I have a ticket. We use Jira on my team to manage the tasks we're doing, and I actually have a ticket to add another example to that examples page because it's gone pretty stale. But there's so many examples that could be added there, you know. And I agree that it would be quite a beautiful thing to see many of the use cases that scientists would want to care about being dealt with using multiple packages and everything, showing how they all work together. It seems like that would take maybe a more concerted effort or just a meeting of some leaders from the various packages to just put their heads together and start talking about how would these actually work together. Seems a little difficult to have that discussion amongst the people when there's, I don't know, maybe a room full of other people watching them.
Yeah, and I think the thing I always kind of come back to and think about is how if there's a paper from 10 years ago of a particular plot, how do I use PyHC to make this plot? What's the steps I would go through? But that's the point.
It would be a good exercise to just get people together sometime and do a little brainstorming session on what kinds of examples would we like to see over there. And then use whatever comes out of that brainstorming session as a driver for combining things or whatever.
Perhaps a somewhat contentious suggestion, if you really wanted to drive a stronger contribution to the examples gallery, would be to make that a maybe not a requirement, but another column on the PyHC project summary table, where you have a column for examples and you can kind of label things partially met, good, to try to apply gentle pressure to the different project groups to, you know, get together and create more examples for the gallery page. I know, being the SpacePy guy here this week, those little flags on that table they come up in our Discord channel. It's like, oh, what do we have to do to make that testing go from orange to green? So it may be something to consider.
So that sounds like there are beginnings of ideas here that
Yeah, having some specific product requirements, say, please add this in. One issue I faced when you write these as grants and you start adding things in as products, we get pushback from our contracting folks saying, wait, this is a grant, but you're promising these deliverables. So, but that means maybe some of them should be done as contracts. We really do want this to be produced as a product. And that holds people's feet to the fire and says, you know, no, this is a NASA product. We want you to produce this. We're not launching it, but you know, we do need this. And then institutions, when you sign up for a contract, your institution also holds your feet to the fire because their reputation is on the line. So it's more expensive, but maybe you do get more.
the issue in terms of Goddard is not necessarily more expensive, but sometimes it does have somewhat more overhead.
Right.
But the contract system is really difficult.
Oh.
However, if we may be able to get we're thinking of getting a project manager sort, you know, not full time, but just as part of this digital library exercise. Somebody who is familiar with this system, and you can just say, hey, could you shepherd this through, and it'll just go off and without too much expense, overhead expense, get the thing through. You know, I've put through contracts, and one of them, things like SPACE and SPEEDAS took over a year.
Wow.
Fortunately, I finally got what needed to happen was to go to the top of the organization. And he told me that's ridiculous, and things started moving.
Yeah.
But
I've seen that happen at APL too, but yeah, different organizations have different rules. So that's just a comment, but
no, I think contracts are fine, and on the other hand, you need to clearly define that and decide, is it a sole source thing, or are you going to put this out for bids from the community?
right. No, because I faced that sometimes when writing a proposal. It's like, oh, we need to provide this software, but it's like, if I start saying, I'm going to create this, I'm going to create documentation, I'm going to create that, and then I sometimes have to tone it down so that it'll make it past our review folks internally, so that they don't force me to try to rewrite it as a contract.
Most places don't have that problem. Universities don't have that problem.
Okay, well, so maybe that's not worth it, but the idea of, you know, no, these really do need to work together. There are interoperability requirements, not just nice to haves, and I mean, that is the super hard thing in all of these community driven things is if we have duplicated efforts, how are we going to decide which ones to move forward, or how are we going to integrate them? because that means somebody's not going to get funded, and the thing they've been working on for 15 years is not going to be the thing that the community uses. And that's a very hard decision to make. And so you'd kind of like it to be made naturally through what gets selected or not selected, or used and not used. But sometimes you, Aaron, at your level, there may have to be a decision. This is the one we're going to use, or we do a community process where we decide which ones to, coalesce on. And that's where having the community process and the code of conduct comes in important. It's like, okay, this is going to be hard. We're going to all try to do this in a friendly way, but the best idea wins, and it might not be my idea. I might have to give that up.
And it can be less efficient too. I mean, the things I've been doing have mostly been sort of watching what's going on in the community and deciding this is something that's worth having as infrastructure, like HelioViewer or SpeedAsk.
Right.
There are enough people around, there are enough citations of it, there's
Yeah.
examples, all kinds of stuff. Okay, I'm going to make that infrastructure and just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we did.
It's been working.
Now, on the other hand, which CDF reader or that kind of issue, I don't think that's probably appropriate for that kind of thing. And
so you can commission a community study. If you want to be on a community panel for this next year, here's the panel, get people from the different packages. And this panel is going to decide how to consolidate. And then that panel's recommendations forms what goes into the next year's AO. This is what's being funded as a consolidation effort. So you kind of get community buy-in, you give people a chance. Okay, you can propose to be a part of the discussion, and then whatever that discussion comes up with, then that's what frames the next AO for here's what we're going to consolidate. Maybe that would work. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud.
It's kind of like a SunPy model, but it's not it's not to actually implement things in there as it is in their case, but it's actually to recommend.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Rebecca had some interesting ideas in the chat. Did you want to say more about those?
I was letting the older people talk.
No.
We need to shut up because what we know
all the old people
is
should
also
shut up.
old.
Rebecca,
So please
speak.
go ahead.
Us youngins have a place.
Sure, that's why we have jobs, right? But so I think if we go for one unified system, we're going to be walking into a jungle, because as written now and with the effort that's already been put in, there are just at the finite level, there's package dependency conflicts, right? So you actually can't install all of this software in one instance of, say, a Conda environment. They have to be in separate pieces. And then there's the issue of what works on Windows versus Linux. I can't get this to work on Windows, but this works fine on Linux. And, it all spirals downhill from there. So but then again, you still want to be able to call the packages that you need. For example, one interoperable, I can't say the word right now. One example of packages working together, I posted in the chat. It was basically you can get data with SpacePy, functionalize the data with Komodo to avoid having such a huge amount of data in memory, and then use PlasmaPy to calculate plasma parameters, and then make some cool plots with Komodo that are interactive and you can publish with results. And then with stuff that I'm working on with CCMC, that would be straightforward to compare such a thing with model results. There's some papers right there. Getting those packages to work together, they don't have to be part of one master package, because the user will probably only want to install those packages on their machine. So because they don't want HelioPy or SunPy. They have no use for it.
I'm actually really intrigued by what you said about the dependencies don't match up, because that's a really practical thing to think about. You can't just have one Python environment and even install all of our packages at the moment, because like the versions of NumPy conflict or something. So
Right.
I'm
Thing that
wondering-
Asher, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, sorry, I was just saying, I was wondering if it's worth trying to fix at least that problem first, because that seems a bit easier than making all the code, or maybe it's harder than just writing adapters. I'm not sure.
Right. So one thing that Asher has mentioned, instead of trying to have everyone depend on the same version of SymPy or same version of NumPy and so on and so forth, just having all of the main packages put their software into Docker containers, then it doesn't matter if there are dependency conflicts. You can talk to the Docker containers and use them just as if the software were installed on your machine, and everyone can use the version of different packages dependencies that they need without putting in however many hours to adjust these things. And then it works on any machine, right? So
But is it necessary to the Docker, or could we just have sort of pre-cooked virtual environments like a requirements.txt for this setup, or the equivalent, or the pip lock, that kind of thing? It's just another approach. I think both approaches could work.
sure. But the thing with that, I don't think that resolves the operating system issues. But I honestly don't know enough about that.
I think getting Docker adoption in the science community is going to be an uphill battle.
Well, we're the people who started.
It's been coming to the rescue many times in my own work, and I keep seeing it coming to the rescue in various other projects, but I agree with you that it's painful to adopt and people are slow to do it.
Yeah, that, I
Python
think
is painful to adopt and people are slow to do it.
I think the Docker is most helpful for cases where there's like, it's not pure Python code, like when it calls C or Fortran.
Well, it's also useful, from what Asher's told me, it's useful when you have a large amount of data that's online, because then you don't even have to download the data to work with it. And that's a huge thing that I've heard people complaining about.
Well, that's
Well, like, are you saying like having the Docker container in the cloud? Because then, I found like if it's over 5 gigabytes or so, it gets unwieldy, or maybe my experience is out of date.
I'm saying things that I've heard more experienced people say, mostly because Asher isn't here to say it. But yeah, he should, if you want more comments about that, he's definitely the better person to ask. He's been playing with that, working on serializing Docker containers and those kinds of things. But my point was more of the package dependency issues, and then just working for layers between packages rather than trying to have one huge package that everyone works with.
Yeah, I think PyHC, like one of the weekly,
Go ahead, Nick.
bi-weekly meetings could be a tutorial on Docker.
I'm not giving it.
Yeah. No, I think there are alternatives too. There's like, for example, with wheels, it gets easier, although, to distribute binaries so that the users don't have to have compilers. I think there are at least those two main ways to do it: Docker versus virtual-env and wheels.
But if you're talking about, resin, but if you're talking about stitching together packages with odd dependencies, I mean, that is not going to compete with biting the bullet and getting everybody on a consistent release schedule and saying, here's the fundamental layers people can build on. That would make it work, rather than, oh, we can stitch this together with Docker, everybody keep doing this every 6 months. And that seems like fixing it sideways, not making it actually an interoperable set of libraries.
Right. It's like a microscale problem of a Linux distribution or whatever operating system you have, where you have to have this periodic consistency checks.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of tools, the Eclipse platform, they release every 6 months or something, you know, and then people have time to, okay, get ready, we're going to move to the next NumPy, or, you know, if you're going to be a fundamental package, you have to commit to staying with the schedule, kind of.
There's dozens of packages that are involved in this, and so it's not a straightforward,
Yeah, no, it's
you
not.
know, pick this cadence, right? I mean, we found that yesterday. We were playing with Dan and the SpacePy one and realized, oh, the latest version of Matplotlib doesn't work with SpacePy. Yes, so big surprise, right?
Wow.
So we had to, and it just,
Oh,
wow, when did
God.
that come out, right? And so just those little things are just going to keep popping up throughout. It's not a fix at one time. This is going to be an ongoing issue.
Absolutely.
There are tools to manage that stuff, right? So if you have CI tools, then you can test new versions. So SunPy does this.
Yeah, we of course do this too with SpacePy. We have a robust CI implementation, but it requires any direction we go, individual or some base shared library that we build off of hub and spoke, whatever. You know, the most important thing is going to be a vibrant community that is identifying issues, placing tickets, responding to tickets, and doing pull requests. I think that's how you inoculate yourself against these kinds of issues, is by having people with time and motivation to always be improving the code and preventing it from being stale. So it's whatever direction we go, we have to make sure that you have enough engagement from the community to keep these things going. And a lot, you know, you look at the table of projects on the PyHC board, and you know, it's the ones that are going to eventually fall off this board are the ones that aren't going to have people working on it.
So I think that's where, like, that's the power of writing some examples, right? So, and that's where the rubber hits the road for the community that we're trying to support, is that, you know, if I'm installing, if there's a conflict between SpacePy and SunPy or any two packages, then, like, you're immediately stymied, right? And so that's the kind of information that should be collected at the PyHC level. And then each project can decide what to do with that. So there's a lot of value in writing and, you know, just trying these examples.
Yeah, I guess the main thing is you need people that are, as Dan said, motivated to do this. And I mean, it's like when you try to make a registry of everything using SPAYS, the trick is to get people to actually do that, even though everybody agrees in principle it's the right thing to do. So I'm not sure. I mean, that's where I come up with the idea that maybe feeding some money into the system would help, but it has to be done judiciously and correctly to make it actually work. So that's where I was thinking, if we had this idea of having a large grant, one large grant from HD, that everybody would then cooperate under that and have some common funding and common goals. But I don't know whether that's practical or not.
And presumably that money would go to some leaders from the various packages that would form some kind of panel to get together and have those discussions, do that kind of work.
Yeah, I mean, the how it's designed is according to however they propose to do it. It could be more than one approach, and then the review panel of that decides which one of those approaches looks the best and go from there.
Mm-hmm. Well,
one other question I want to raise, I know we're not quite done on that, but there were fewer proposals in this time for the HDE, and a number of people here didn't propose, who might have. I'm wondering what the thoughts are about, independent of this large package. Are the HDE proposals too small? What is it that makes them undesirable?
I think
Or is
the
it COVID.
well, that probably has something to do with it.
I think so.
I know
Yeah.
my team did apply for, I think it was a 75K grant, and we didn't win it, but we did apply, so I'll remove myself from this discussion.
No, I'm talking about this round.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think part of it is just the pandemic. People are not as focused, or they're not as, it's not as easy to start something new or collaborate. A lot of these require connections with different aspects, and starting those now is just harder.
Yeah, I really resonated with Nick's comment at the beginning of his talk, which said it's just harder to either start or end anything.
Yeah.
Do anything.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe that's the reason we've got a downturn.
Okay.
I mean, 75K seemed like enough to actually be an interesting number. Maybe if we reduce the number of pages that the proposal has to be or something, I don't know.
Yeah, there's also like having to rewrite a proposal for this every year,
Well,
since these are like relatively short term.
to make multiple years. Of course, that means you get fewer per year. But that's why I was thinking this, if we did the large proposal route, that would be a multi-year thing. Because it takes at least a few years to get things up and running into good shape.
There's also the possibility of an NSF cyber infrastructure for sustained scientific innovation, plus or minus a few words, that proposal opportunity. And those could be like up to even $1 mega per year. And it would require us to, or whoever's participating, to put together a coherent plan, which would in and of itself be a useful exercise.
Yeah, no, that would be a great thing to do. I like that idea.
Yeah.
We decided not to do that this last round, right?
It'd be kind of by default.
Yeah, it's too late,
Yeah, it was a timing thing.
right? So do you know when the next one of those is, Nick?
Oh, looking it up now.
Uh-huh. Okay, anyway, I didn't want to totally derail the other discussion, but I wanted to have a little bit of sanity check on what's going on now. So anyway, if people have thoughts about this idea, I mean, it seems like some sort of cohesiveness would be a good thing.
So like Aaron, we were having this talk yesterday in our little breakout group, I think, about how do we even decide what packages belong in the core packages, because there's at least one that we have in the other table that people probably use more than some of the ones in the core package. And so maybe, I mean, does it make sense to try to refine the set of what we consider core packages and just target those to be interoperable first and then get the stragglers later?
Yeah, I was certainly thinking in those terms, I guess, as implicitly. Although the other, the others could fit themselves into a particular package and they're subsumed.
I agree. And that shrinks the scope a little bit, which is nice. I think there's 5 core projects, so we'd be talking about a panel of, not much more than 5 people, which isn't unwieldy.
Okay, well, maybe the thing to do is, I hate to have yet another Zoom meeting. It's just so hard to want to do another Zoom meeting. But at some point in this process, I think maybe later in the summer sometime, to having thought about this. And if anybody has comments, please send them my way about how we might want to organize this and get a little more formal cohesion rather than just people using each other's packages now and then. But I think there has been a lot of effort towards unification. Things like CDF readers, we're down to a couple of them that are fairly popular, and have the reasons for being more than one probably. But anyway, okay. I guess my time has run out, so hand it back to Julie. But as I said, please send me comments and thoughts.
If we do have a panel, I'd suggest having like early career scientists make sure that they're involved too.
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones using Python.
Hello, just graduated with my master's.
Yeah, Rebecca, Sean, I'm sure there are others here. Harris.
Well, thanks for leading that discussion, Erin. So let's see, in the last 10 or so minutes, I just wanted to kind of do a wrap up of the meeting. So let's see, share. Which desktop 3. Cool. So probably want to present. All right, can everyone see that?
Yep.
Cool. So just wanted to go over some meeting logistics to start with. As far as this meeting went, what worked, what didn't? Is there anything people think we should do differently next time? If anyone has some quick comments, and chat about it for a second. What everyone think of this one compared to the last time, which was a lot more spread out.
I liked it a little better this time.
Yeah, I thought this was a good way of doing it, that, a couple hours in the morning is about as much as I can handle per day, but not too much, not too little.
Of course, if we're live, it becomes a different proposition.
Yeah, if that ever happens.
I'm hoping that maybe by the fall we'll be able to have an in-person meeting again. We'll see.
Yeah.
That
I
would be
like the
great.
more concentrated format. Having it spread out over 3 weeks made it hard to follow or track. Your brain just dropped the thread kind of thing, but this was good.
It was worth trying because I think virtual is the only time where you could, really spread it out that much and still have people come. But, we did the experiment. We like this one better, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I agree. I liked this format better too.
The hackathons didn't seem to be as popular for whatever reason. Maybe we just need better, more generally.
People are tired of Zoom hackathons.
Yeah, last meeting or two, the hackathons were also the least attended sessions. Maybe
We had
that's
a half
just
dozen
something.
people throwing knives at Dan.
Oh, okay. That's awesome.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah,
We had a good sized group. We were peppering with all kinds of questions.
Good.
that was a productive group. So, yeah, and yeah, a hackathon would be more. You wouldn't need more time than just 2 hours, because if you really want to put something on your computer and start playing with stuff, even starting up is already takes considerable time, and then it's like you can't really start hacking until you have spent half a day setting yourself up, and so that would dedicate. You would need like maybe more than a full day, or really 2 or 3 days in close succession for a longer time. But other than that, I think it being a tutorial session for this PyBats thing was very useful, and thanks for that. Then presenting all this stuff that he had. And other than that, yeah, I think the 2-hour sessions format is good, with all other things going on in the background. If you're not traveling to a conference and dedicating your full self to it, you can't do more than just a few hours. So that's good. I liked it.
Awesome.
Yeah, this is my first time coming to a PyHC workshop, and I want to thank the organizers for keeping it compact, both in terms of the total length and the time per day. It makes a huge difference when you are experiencing cumulative extreme Zoom burnout. So, but the hackathon was a fantastic opportunity simply because it gave me an excuse to do what I should have been doing years ago, which is just holding a tutorial like this that also allows me to capture things into IPython notebooks so that I can share that and help. You know, there's two kinds of documentation. There's the specific details, and then there's the large scale tutorials, and constructing both of those takes a lot of effort. So thank you guys for having me. Thanks to everybody who showed up. Was like great. A lot of questions, that really helps. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll echo thank you so much to the organizers. It's really helpful, really important to our community. So we all do really appreciate it.
Happy to help.
Well, this is where Julie says you're welcome, because she did basically everything.
Yep. Well, Eric was a big help. Eric Grimes in coming up with topics for things. So big thanks to him for helping me.
Yeah, thanks, Julie, for sending out daily emails just before the session starts.
Yeah.
So one would have the reference to the link, which always gets buried in hundreds of emails since the last time, since yesterday, literally. And so for me, I was, oh yeah, I have to click on this to join this meeting. And that was very helpful. And just reminding people where to springboard into the meeting. So that was helpful.
Good to know. We'll keep doing that in the future.
It adds to the emails, but it's very helpful because you can see like, oh, it's very recent and you can find it.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for the feedback. If you have any more ideas come to mind, you're free to put comments on that general conference notes document, which is on the meeting G Drive. Again, anonymity is fine as long as you keep our code of conduct in mind, or you can just directly email me and or Sean. That's always fine. Let's see, I just had a couple more slides. Just meetings and update. I think I mentioned it before, but we did submit an PyHC AGU session proposal for this coming fall. Haven't heard back yet on it being accepted, but I doubt it won't be. It hasn't in the past. And we'll also be having in approximately another 6 months, our fall 2021 meeting. Obviously, it's a little hard to pinpoint. Is it going to be fully virtual? Can we do a little bit of hybrid? So we'll be chatting about that more as things evolve, I'm sure. But just to have it on mind, it'll probably be sometime early to mid-November. So. And telecons, just some dates upcoming for that. Nothing set in stone yet, but throughout this meeting, I came up with a few different ideas that maybe we could have a telecon about. The first bullet there, debrief on the Hilo 2050 workshop. I was kind of hoping to do that maybe on the May 24th telecon, but I didn't know if there was someone on this call that went to that workshop that might be willing to just kick off discussion for that. So just wanted to throw that out there. Feel free to send me a message if you might be willing to just start that discussion. I doubt it would be the kind of thing where you're just having to present for a straight hour. So yeah, let's see.
I also think
oh, go ahead.
I would want to add to the list of potential telecons some kind of follow-up to this discussion we had today, maybe more focused on like, what kinds of money do we want to shoot for if we're shooting for money? Should we start actually pulling out names for people that could be on a panel, start to dive into that a bit more in a telecon?
Yeah. Writing that down. That sounds awesome to me. Yes, please. If you ever have telecon ideas, send them my way. They're always encouraged.
Yeah, I second Sean's thought that we need to continue this discussion.
Yeah.
There is money to be spent. The data system is actually getting a boost. Partly because we got so many more things coming in, partly because the people want to do things like cloud computing and they need somebody, needs to be somebody to organize it. But this is one of the pieces that I think is important to that whole thing. But we need to talk about it. We need to get it organized. We need to know where to spend the money.
Yeah, the question that Rebecca brought up about dependency conflicts, I think there's been some good conversation in the chat, and that would be a good thing to continue to in the not too distant future.
Yeah, this chat should be preserved. Is somebody going to preserve this chat?
Yeah, I planned to save it and put it in the meeting notes probably.
You get a text dump out of it when you like get the recording. So we can upload a text file of everything in the chat and stuff too.
Yeah.
Well, this session wasn't recorded, right?
Yeah, it's being recorded.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Hope you didn't do anything awkward on your camera. In any case, I think those are all the slides I had, and we're just about out of time anyway. So yeah, thanks everyone for an excellent meeting and showing up and participating. I know Zoom fatigue is real, so I really appreciate everyone giving efforts on this. And yeah, I guess our next telecon will be May 24th, topic TBD, probably one of the ones we just discussed. So yeah, so I guess that's a wrap.
Okay, thanks all.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone. Talk to you
Thanks,
soon.
everyone. See you all.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.